Welcome back to CHGO Bears After Dark, presented by Circa Sports. Make sure you download the Circa Sportsbook Illinois app at circasports.com/Illinois-app. We're back and better than ever. I'm your host, Greg Braggs Jr. Alongside me, as always, is our guy, Corey Wootton. We're licking our wounds after another abysmal loss where the Bears had a 2-score lead. They become tied for the most losses in a season in NFL history where they had a 2-score lead going into the fourth quarter. Matt Eberflus is doing a lot of firsts. There was some firsts in the Lions game as far as turnover ratio and still losing the game. You saw a little bit of those stats floating around again yesterday. Losing to Denver the way they did, 28-3 with a less than 1% chance of losing. It was like one of the first times in Bears history that had ever happened. So finding ways to lose in unprecedented fashion, and this team now finds themselves far outside the playoff picture looking in when they could have easily had the keys to the playoff race had they just done the very simple things and execute wins that were sitting there right for them. So, Corey, what was your reaction to the way that all went down yesterday in Cleveland?
Oh man, it was unfortunate, right? I think the defense for the most part of the game played a pretty good game, right? Towards the end, that last drive, Njoku really hurt them, and that was a guy I talked about, man. This is the year where he's finally coming into his own. You know, he has all the tools. He starts catching the ball this year. I kind of didn't understand at the end of the game why we're dropping Justin Jones into coverage, right? I think for the most part, Eberflus called a good game. I just don't understand that call on third down, big play. Don't understand why you ever want a defensive tackle dropping into coverage or an end for that matter.
Right.
So kind of just didn't understand that. But I thought the defense played really well for the most part in that game. Montez Sweat, I talked about the two backup offensive tackles that he was going to be feasting on. We saw him with the pressures, with the sacks all day. So that was great. Secondary played well. I mean, Stevenson, loved the pick he had. Eddie Jackson, Edmonds had a huge pick six. Defense really carried it for most of the
Stevenson interception was unreal.
Exactly. Yeah, that was
the way he came across for that one. That was,
and then shielded the ball so that way it wouldn't hit the ground as well. I'm really happy with the way the defense played. Obviously, with the exception of that last drive, that third down. That I still can't keep thinking about that. Like literally, we were so close.
Well, it sounds like the players in the locker room are kind of where you're at, where they can't stop thinking about it either. It was at the topic of conversation today at Hallis Hall. It was at the front of their minds, obviously. Post game, Justin Jones reacting to it, saying, you know, I'm just trying to do what the coach is telling me to do, but I really didn't practice that all that much. When you hear that, you know, what is your reaction when a player is in a lot of ways calling their coach out and not such a graceful way? He's basically saying I've never really practiced this.
You know, that emoji facepalm, that's exactly how I'm feeling right now. I think it's evident with their frustration of like how good they played, you know, with the exception of because I guarantee if they call a different coverage, a different play defensively, they're probably able to stop him in that situation. So it is frustrating because Braggs, right, for a good portion of 4 quarters, for the almost 4 full quarters, they played pretty lights out football. I think it just came down to the end where even though Joe Flacco threw 3 picks, Kevin Stefanski's like, we're going to still air the ball out, right? We're still going to take shots. We're still going to do that. And I thought they did a good job of just rallying Cleveland, that is. But the Bears, it just has me scratching my head because Eberflus, you called such a great game up until that point. And Justin Jones said, I didn't practice that. So why would you call that play? That's what practice is for, to iron stuff out, get
Well,
people comfortable with it.
and not only call a play like that, but to call it in that moment
Yeah,
on 3rd and
exactly.
15 where you get off the field, you have a chance to either win the game or it goes to overtime,
Yeah.
and to go into your bag of tricks. I mean, he said he had something up his sleeve, but Mark, keep that card holstered up that sleeve
Yeah.
because
Keep
we didn't need to see that.
keep those sleeves down. Don't do that anymore. I can understand potentially, like you see sometimes where teams will be in like a 2nd and 4, 2nd and 5, where they know it's going to be like a crosser. They know there's going to be some kind of route like that where it's one of those ones that you surprise them and all of a sudden defensive tackle gets a pick. I understand it in that type of situation, but when the game's on the line, a big critical play right there, you just can't call that.
Well, David Njoku said it after the game in the visiting locker room. He said, we knew pre-snap what the look they were giving us, and he knew that he was going to have this opportunity. He said, all I had to do was run my route a little deeper. He's like, but he said he was kind of laughing that was what they decided to go with when Jaquan Brisker's showing blitz on the edge. He knew he was going to get this one-on-one matchup, and all he had to do was get up the field, and he trusted that Joe Flacco was going to deliver the ball, and that was a wrap.
Yeah, that was kind of what sealed the game. And obviously, right, if we catch that ball in the end zone, Darnell Mooney, even despite how bad things were offensively, you still get to pull one out. And I think that's been a common theme, with Darnell Mooney, just drops. And I know you shouldn't rely on the last play, but I think it's a situation where, hey, good teams find a way to win in that situation. How many times have we seen Aaron Rodgers throw that Hail Mary? Somebody comes up with it, right? Making plays for him. So you just wish, because it wasn't like a crazy catch where he had to go over here one hand to do this. Literally, it hit his stomach. It, kicked it. I'm like, it's right there. You have to be able to catch the ball.
Yep.
And a couple times, in regular routes, he dropped the ball this week, last week. So I don't know what's going on. I don't know if he's frustrated, and just kind of his response about it. Kind of.
If I always try to stay in my meatball lane, and I save the insider info for our intrepid reporters on the beat, like Mark Harmon, who do a fantastic job, covering these guys at Hallis Hall. But I have heard some different stories all the way dating back to training camp from some different, people coming to me with information, and, whether or not it, can be confirmed. The one thing that did set off alarms to me were I heard 3 different stories since training camp and a couple throughout the season from 3 different people where the tone was similar. And so, and to me, from what I'm hearing, is that and maybe this is an obvious statement, you don't need an insider info from somebody to tell you this, but he's not happy with the system he's playing in or the role that he has within the system. Mm-hmm. And I could see that, going into training camp when Chase Claypool was here, what was his role at that time? Then Chase Claypool, leaves a few weeks into the season. Obviously, he wasn't a great addition to the locker room. He gets out of there. Now all of a sudden his role changes, and we've seen it throughout the season, the way they've asked him to block a lot on these quick screens, and then when he is getting a ball, a lot of times it's on a screen pass where he's getting laid out because they're not executing it properly. And then it's very erratic when he gets a downfield throw. Sometimes it's Mooney that's not making the catch, or Fields isn't making the perfect throw, or when they're on the same page and they finally do hit the perfect pass, it's just one of those things that doesn't happen enough to where the chemistry, and cohesion that we normally see from those two is there. So I think what we're seeing from Darnell Mooney is a lot of frustration.
No, I understand that standpoint, but my thing is like this. When you do get your opportunity, you have to be able to catch the ball, and that's something that he struggled to do the past couple of weeks. I think everyone, you, me, the fans, they've seen that, right? They've seen him struggle with catching the football. And just like the response afterwards, like, I wish like it just seemed like he didn't care that much. And I'm like, at the end of the day, in this league, you have to take accountability, right? When you don't make a play, yes, was that a huge play and it could have won the game? 100%. Was that the end all be all? They should have took care of business earlier, right? And not let it to that last play.
Right.
But when you have an opportunity there, to win the game for your team, And there's countless him, Robert Tonyan. Fields threw an absolute dime to him,
Yep.
and you drop it. Like, you got to help your quarterback out in the situation. They were struggling to get first downs, and I'm watching the game, and I don't know how you felt about how Justin Fields played, but people were very critical on him, and I'm like, he was kind of handcuffed the way they were calling those plays. I mean, did you not agree with that? Like, especially in the second half, I'm looking at some of the play calls, and I'm like, conservative call after conservative call, and I'm like, in the first half, we saw them him and DJ Moore be on the same page with the back shoulder throws, and we saw them get some rhythm and continuity with that. And then all of a sudden, we didn't see much of that. So I felt like, we were seeing a lot of toss plays to the outside. And the one thing I hate against an athletic defense like Cleveland, right? Cleveland can linebacking core, their defensive ends can run, they're physical, they'll get off the football interior wise. That's probably one of the best defensive fronts we've seen. The way they played, they controlled the line of scrimmage from the beginning, even before Tevin Jenkins got hurt. That's the first time I've seen him get driven back. That's the first time I've seen him get pancaked by a 3 technique. Like, they brought their lunch pail. Like, that was hats off to them, right? To Darius Smith, Myles Garrett and company. They brought their lunch pail and they took it to the Bears. They kicked their ass.
They did. And I was a little surprised by that, because the defense had, the entire team's depleted, Cleveland, that being with injuries. So I thought that was something that could help them. Their secondary certainly came to play. We got Mark Carmen here in our chat asking, why did Justin Fields allow a wildcat in Greg Newsome to stop him on 4th and 1? We'll get to that here in a second, Mark. But yeah, I mean, there were a couple of Northwestern Wildcats flying around the football on Sunday for Cleveland, and but I was definitely surprised by how well Cleveland played with the injuries taken into consideration. I thought the rain was certainly a factor. The run game was non-existent for the Bears. That's a big factor I think people aren't really talking about as much, because we're constantly in this evaluation period with Justin Fields. So, it just was one of those things where the Bears just could never get out the gates going. Another thing that was really interesting to start the game, speaking of getting out the gates, is Cleveland was the first team to win the toss and defer and take the ball instead of deferring and letting the Bears take the ball. And I think they're starting to see what the stats are showing, and that's the Bears are one of the better teams scoring the football on their first drive. And so they, I think had a good strategy there to start the game to kind of throw the Bears off balance. It seems like the Bears always start with the football. So there was a lot of different aspects, I thought, that Cleveland definitely outplayed them, and they were blitzing a lot. Jason McKee commented on Nick Moriano's reporting today, where Nick was really highlighting just how bad the running back blocking was in this game. The protection in the backfield wasn't there. And Jason McKee was talking about, a running back's, technique isn't always going to be perfect. They're not offensive linemen, and it's about effort. And in some of the clips that Nick shared, if you go on Twitter and at Nicholas Moriano and check those out, you can see Deontay Foreman a few times getting beat, and a few times Khalil Herbert getting beat, and Roshan Johnson and even Kari Blasingame got beat. And that's a trickle-down effect. You only have so many possessions in a game. And so I just think it started to snowball on these guys, and they really could just never get going. Now, you asked me, how did I think Justin Fields did? I mean, it wasn't great. Robert Tonyan's drop was bigger than the Hail Mary drop. Everybody's going to talk about the Hail Mary drop, but the Robert Tonyan drop is the game changer, because that's in the first half. It's maybe the best throw he's had all season. And Robert lets his quarterback down, and there it is. And now Justin Fields has got to wear all the criticism today. Robert Tonyan, nobody's talking about him, and so, heavy lie at the crown of being the QB1 here in Chicago. And that's just what it is. So, and that's where I want to talk, because I know we only have you a short period of time here. We're going to let you go halfway through and then bring in our GM, Jake Flannigan, for our meatball segment on the back end here of After Dark. But that is where, it's all about Justin Fields, right? And the title of this show was, this is a failed test, and I thought this was the best thing about the Bears in this game was it was as silly as some people thought it was. They did have an opportunity to go on a playoff run. This was the first game in December in Matt Eberflus's career as head coach, or even Justin Fields' career as quarterback, to have a chance in December to win a meaningful game and stay in a playoff race, stay in the hunt. And they failed across the board. It wasn't good enough is what I keep trying to say. And you can say, yeah, the defense played well at times. They played great even at times. And Justin Fields shows off some plays that maybe he's the only quarterback in the world that can do, breaking out of a Myles Garrett tackle and throwing a dime ball to Cole Kmet. And you can say all those things, but at the end of the day, it wasn't good enough to win the football game. So that's where I want to go with you with this. And we can go down the line with Eberflus, Getsy, and Justin Fields. But, with this being a failed test and the clock's ticking on the decision that Ryan Poles is going to have to make, and we've talked about this a lot, Corey, and I know it's going to, piss a lot of Bears fans off, but I've just come to the conclusion that if they get the number 1 pick, which isn't in the bag yet, that they're going to have to move on from Justin Fields. And I'm not trying to say that he doesn't have talent, but it's what Ryan Poles was asking for when he came back from injury. Consistency is what they're looking for. Is he capable of great plays that very few quarterbacks can make? Yes. Is he capable of making all the throws on the field? Yes. Does he do it consistently enough? No. And it's not all on Luke Getsy. I pile on Luke Getsy. I've fired him 4 times this season on our post-game shows. He is always at the top of my frustration. But at the end of the day, I just think timing-wise, it's not going to work out for Justin Fields here in Chicago.
I disagree. I'd be surprised if they let me rephrase this. So if he finishes the season right with some good games, some average games, whatever, I do think they'll keep him. I do. I'm just thinking about the relationship probably that Kevin Warren and him have from his history in the Big Ten. I look at Poles, like I do think he values Justin Fields, right? It's a question of what does he feel about him, right? And I'm when you look at the criticism of Justin Fields, right? It is hard to get a full evaluation of him because look at his play callers, right? He's had Matt Nagy and Luke Getsy. So when we talked about, and I've been very vocal about this was supposed to be a very critical year, right? We thought Luke Getsy had figured out the play calling with Justin Fields and everything last year. And all of a sudden this year with DJ Moore, revamped offensive line, we're like, oh, here's the next step. We got 3 great running backs. And what have we seen, whether it was Fields or Bagent? Inconsistency in the play calling.
Yep.
And people say, well, I haven't seen enough from Justin Fields. So let me ask you this, Braggs. Let's say Josh Allen was in this scheme. Do you think he would be performing well? Let me ask you that question. For a mobile guy, a guy that's been very consistent, MVP type candidate, right? Pro Bowler.
Yep.
Look at the struggles he's had with his play calling with Dorsey, right?
Yep.
Granted, right? So that's what I'm asking. Like, do you think Josh Allen would be successful?
I mean,
my answer is no. I don't think so. I don't think anybody would be successful in this scheme, with the exception of a guy like maybe Aaron Rodgers, because I think he could play in whatever scheme. He'll make it work, right? He's one of those talented quarterbacks that it doesn't matter if Nathaniel Hackett is his play caller or Luke Getsy. And I think that proves that. Look at Nathaniel Hackett goes to Denver, can't call plays. Russell Wilson, who's this perennial Pro Bowler, on every commercial, struggles last year. Look at Luke Getsy here. So I think people put too much credit into what they did, for Aaron Rodgers, and they had nothing to do with that.
No, I've said a million times, like I said, I fired Luke Getsy. I fired him yesterday again for the 4th time this season. I don't think he's done Justin Fields any favors. I think the Bears made a mistake by bringing in a guy that had no experience calling plays, and the only experience developing a quarterback was with one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever do it in Aaron Rodgers as a quarterback coach in Green Bay. That was a mistake. But we can't we cannot rewind the clock, unfortunately. If we could, maybe things would be different and Justin Fields would be further along in his development. Has he gotten better? the stats show in his first 17 games compared to his second 17 games, he is improving. Is it enough to not draft a quarterback at number 1? I don't think so, unfortunately, because if Justin Fields then enters his 4th year, you have to consider, contract scenarios that start to creep up a little faster, and there's just more dynamics to it. And you ask me if Josh Allen was here, would he do better? Yeah, I do think he would do a little better. Would this team be perfect? No. But, like Mark Carmen asked, on the 4th and 1, why, and he's saying it tongue in cheek because Mark is a Northwestern Wildcat, and obviously you are.
He actually went to Iowa, but he likes Northwestern.
He went to Iowa and tries to claim Northwestern. Exactly right. He couldn't make it at a school with that kind of an educational standard. But I'll say this much. Let's just talk about that play specifically.
Okay.
Because they roll it out. They said today that it was an option play for DJ Moore up the field.
Yeah.
Darnell Mooney's supposed to chip, supposed to pick, DJ Moore's guy. It all gets thrown off because the DB blitzes and goes rogue. And then Darnell Mooney loses contain on the edge. Luke Getsy calls this play where he's rolling out to the outside, to the right side on the short side of the field. And the DB makes an unbelievable play. He trips him up by his heel. Justin Fields falls literally inches short. So it's a game of inches, falls just short of getting the first down, which would have been a big moment in that game. But DJ Moore is flashing down, streaking down the field. And do I think a guy like Josh Allen, because we're all going to say everybody just goes to Patrick Mahomes. Could he make that throw? Of course, Patrick Mahomes can make that throw. He's one of the greatest quarterbacks ever. But are there a good handful of quarterbacks that are in the top echelon of this league? Would they have felt the pressure coming and quickly made that decision to float that ball over the DB and lead DJ Moore for a walk-in touchdown? Yes, I do believe they would. Is that fair to because, okay, let's say in the scenario, Justin did decide to float it and it goes incomplete. Would the meatball, be bitching that he didn't just run it? Of course I would. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Most meatball fans are only going to focus on the result and not the process. I understand that when I say this, but at the same time, life's not fair. And are there top echelon quarterbacks that can make that decision quickly and throw that ball open to DJ Moore for a touchdown? Yes, I do believe there are.
Yeah, I think Josh Allen, knowing the type of quarterback he is, he's probably going to run that for a first down. And I think majority of mobile quarterbacks would. Think about this. Justin Fields, 9 times out of 10, he gets a first down. He was obviously it was slick because of the rain and all that. There was a couple times where he was slipping. Other guys on the field were slipping. So I think definitely the weather had a factor in stuff. But tell me how many times Justin Fields been one-on-one with players and they try to get his legs and it don't affect them one bit. So I think it was just the right time, right place thing. And I like him being decisive. Either whether it's a quarterback's going to throw the ball or run the ball, you just have to be decisive about it. And 9 times out of 10, like I said, he gets the first down. So I didn't mind that play call. The only thing I have a hard time with, and people say, well, do you think, you got to ask yourself this question. I think Poles got to ask themselves this question too. Next year at the start of the season, is Caleb Williams, do you believe he's better, or Drake May, right, than Justin Fields is? I think you have to ask that question.
That's the $1 million question. 100%.
Yep. And if you do think that, then draft him, right? But if you're like, I can't really tell, I think you have to draft and build around him. I do.
Right. So I agree with that. Somebody said to me last night, well, if they're going to keep Fields and trade back that pick or take Marvin Harrison, he has to be completely sold on Justin Fields. And I disagree. I think it is more what you just said. He has to be completely sold on Caleb Williams or Drake May if he's going to move off of, move off of Justin Fields, and B, move off of, trading back or drafting Marvin Harrison Jr. and adding to this roster. So I agree with that statement. Do I think if they have the number 1 pick that he's going to feel strongly enough about Caleb Williams? Yes, I do. That's a guess though. I've tried to caution Bears fans across the board that people kind of got their heels dug in the dirt. They definitely got to keep Fields. They definitely got to get rid of him. And I just try to tell people, to me, I don't think this is hedging. I just think it's 50-50. I don't know how anybody can say here with certainty what Ryan Poles is definitely going to do. I mean, they're polling GMs in Charles Robinson's Yahoo report. Greg Olson came out and said, he would move on. You're getting different opinions across the board, but I just don't know what Ryan Poles is going to do. And we've talked about this before. The other element that's going to come before that decision is a head coaching decision.
Yeah.
And with them losing this game the way they did, I think that moves the needle closer. Because if you had asked me before the Browns game, I would have said Matt Eberflus is going to be here next year. Now, let's see how they finish, because they blow another game like they just did. Yeah, both of us are step for step that we should hire Jim Harbaugh.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's still things to be played out before we know with certainty if they're going to move on from the quarterback or even pick at one, or if they're going to move on from the coach. If I had to guess right now, just to do predictions for prediction's sake, I think it'll be Matt Eberflus here next year because the defense is starting to turn the corner. I think they'll hire Frank Reich as the OC that got fired from Carolina because Matt Eberflus and Frank Reich coached together in Indianapolis. And then if they have the number one pick, I think they'll draft Caleb Williams. That's my prediction, but there's still 3 more games to go.
Yeah, I guess we don't know exactly how Poles is feeling. So it's a tough situation. The thing is why I think Poles will keep him, right? Because I think Justin Fields has shown enough of improvement, right? And listen, we got into the whole Getsy thing and stunting his development, right? But I think we can all agree that we've seen strides in Justin Fields, right? When you look at his stats yesterday, they looked terrible because 2 Hail Mary plays that turned out to be picks. So it kind of skews your stats. But I think what we've seen is tremendous growth, right? He doesn't throw a lot of picks anymore like he did his first year, right? Or early on in that second year. We're seeing some growth there. And obviously, the holding the football, I think that's an issue that people really struggle to understand. I'm okay with him taking a sack on 3rd down. I really am, because you're going to throw the ball out of bounds or you're going to take a sack, right? As long as you're not fumbling the ball. He's trying to extend the play, right? So you're going to get off the field anyway. So I am okay with him taking a sack on 3rd down if nothing's there down the field and you're trying to make a play. My thing is the 1st down, 2nd down. When you take those sacks, those are bad plays, right? Because then they put you behind the yardage. So 3rd down sacks, I don't have a problem with. He does have a lot of dynamic playmaking ability. Caleb Williams is a talented guy as well, but we've seen some of his weakness, son. When he played Notre Dame, they got after him.
Yep.
Right? We see him struggle. So I think any quarterback's going to struggle with pressure. So I think Poles has a big decision ahead of him. But just imagine this, and I brought up this scenario, right? You get an offensive coordinator that you feel really great about. You potentially could have Justin Fields for another 2 years still under his rookie deal if you pick up that option, right? You draft a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr., right? Then all of a sudden you get a guy like Johnny Newton for that 3 technique. You get a defensive end in the offseason. I think that alone, having a play caller, having that defense set here with Eberflus the way they've been doing, I feel pretty dang good about that Bears team. And imagine the weapons there. How many times this year have we seen drops from Darnell Mooney and this, Tanyan, and at times you can't do that, right? You got to be able to help out your quarterback. I know a guy like Marvin Harrison and DJ Moore on both sides, right? You're like, woo, pick your poison. You want to try to double one of them, they'll beat you. So I would like that scenario, but
and I think that and as much as I say this is how I think it might play out, the scenario you just said, I don't have an issue with. I see intrigue in that as well. And that's where I just think Bears fans, everybody's kind of like feeling like they have to draw their line in the sand and get pissed off if one thing doesn't happen one way or the other. But the 49ers have built a team around a quarterback. The Eagles built a team around a quarterback, and the Bears have an opportunity if they do decide
Miami Dolphins.
Right. The Miami Dolphins. We've talked about this here the last few weeks. So there are examples to show you that there's a blueprint to build this team without being quarterback obsessive. It is a unique situation because those other teams didn't have a number 1 pick with a prospect like Caleb Williams coming out. You only get so many chances at that kind of an opportunity. And that's what creates this conversation. We don't know if Ryan Poles feels strongly about Caleb Williams. And if he doesn't, he's going to hold on to Fields, and he's going to probably, in my opinion, probably trade. As much as I'd want Marvin Harrison Jr., he's probably going to trade that pick for a haul and set this franchise up for years to come, just as he did last year with the pick. So we'll just have to wait and see. Tonight we're going to cut you short a little bit, Corey. Wanted to
get out of here. No.
Yeah, get out of here, Corey. No, but we appreciate you. And next week, Monday is Christmas, so we'll see if we'll have an After Dark maybe on Tuesday or something. Try to react to things, but we'll just see how that lays out when the schedule comes out. Jake's coming on here soon. I'll just ask him here live on the air, and we'll figure it out. But either way, you got any final thoughts before you take off and enjoy your Christmas week?
Yeah, the final thought I have, right, because I think everybody knows how I feel about Justin Fields and the talent he has, right? I think the talent he has, for me, it's hard to move on when you've seen the way that the play callers have been, right? And you can only imagine with a good play caller, right, a guy that can script for success for him, what he can do, right? Because you can argue that he's more talented than a Jalen Hurts. I'm not saying he's playing better than that, but I'm saying I think we all see the talent, right? His ability to run the football, darts he throws at times, arm strength. We see all that, right? And I think what Philly has done around Jalen Hurts has been amazing, right? And then I look at Mike McDaniel, how they've been able to build this team around Tua, right? Get him a dynamic weapon in Tyreek Hill to accompany Jalen Waddle as well, the running back crew that they have. But Tua, a couple years ago, they were ready to toss him to the side, Braggs. He's trash. He can't play. Everybody in that organization didn't believe in him, right? Even the GM didn't believe in him, right? The owner, they didn't want him here. And then comes in Mike McDaniel. He caters his offense around him. And then all of a sudden, he's a Pro Bowl caliber guy. He's an MVP type candidate. So my thing is like this. If you do believe Justin Fields has the talent that he can do it, keep him, right? Get a play caller that can build the wide receiver around him, get a center, right? Continue to build this offensive line, continue to build the defensive line. Imagine how scary that defense would be with a defensive end, a defensive tackle that can play. And then all of a sudden, a stud at wide receiver, 2 studs in DJ Moore.
They'll be stacked. They'll be stacked.
And Cole Kmet, what he's been able to do, especially in the red zone, the 3 running backs. So I just think they have to build around him. I hope they do that because I just think his growth has been stunted because of this play call. And I think we can all agree that the play calling has been very bad, right? Yep. So it's hard to really truly evaluate him when this has been there. But it's something they have to do, right? Yep. It's a crazy decision. I would like to keep him because I think he could be the future here. I think he could be a top 10 quarterback in this league, maybe even top 5 with the right play caller.
Well, you're somebody that's been in many locker rooms, and you're giving that locker room perspective on what you would do, and you're hearing that sentiment echoed by guys like DJ Moore and Darnell Mooney here last night and today, that they would do the same thing. So I definitely think the players on that team probably feel the same way, the majority of them, if not all of them, and it'll be interesting to see what Ryan Poles' decision is, because it is not easy, as everyone is, this is a conversation that's going to unfold here for the next 3 months. And I'm going to always try to keep a, balanced approach to how we talk about this stuff. But I know that emotions are going to be high when people feel strongly about how this should go a certain way. But it'll be interesting to see what Ryan Poles does, because it is not an easy decision in the slightest. Patrick Tahawa, $2 super chat, says Justin stays, Getsy goes, draft more weapons, bear down. So
I like that, Patrick. But real quick before I get off, DJ Moore and those guys, they wouldn't say it if they didn't mean it. Because at the end of the day, if they didn't want him here, they wouldn't say that. They're like, but I think it speaks volumes to what they feel about him. And,
I agree.
And him and Justin Fields are getting on the same page. And I just think the relationship that they're building, you saw the back shoulder plays. Those were amazing. So it would be awesome to have them together for another year with another weapon. We'll see how it unfolds, right? That's the beauty of these things. It keeps it interesting.
Never a dull moment with the Bears.
But I do. The last thing is, I do think you could potentially acquire more picks and really build this team if you do trade back and you keep Justin Fields.
Yep,
I do. I think you set yourself up for the future in a good way if you do that. So only time will tell. was always a good time talking with you, man. We'll maybe get it on
Corey,
Tuesday of next week.
Yeah, definitely enjoy your Christmas weekend with your family, and thank you for everything here that you do on this show. We'll see you soon. Enjoy the holidays, and let's see what they got here on Sunday for the Chicago Bears.
Sounds good, my man. Take it easy, bro.
Yeah, later, Corey. That is Corey Wootton, and now joining is our guy, Jake Flannigan, drinking some Goose Island beer. But before we get into the next segment here on our show, want to give a shout out to our guys over at Circa Sports. Make sure you're heading over to the Circa Sports app. They just got into Illinois. Everybody knows they're amazing sports book in Las Vegas, but now they're here in Illinois, and you have a chance to sign up for their app. And their app is amazing because they have tight money line splits. Games strive to be a -110 split on the Circa Sports menu, unlike other sports books, which may use a -115 split or -120 split. Circa Sports keeps as little money as possible on large market bets, especially compared to the other books. Circa Sports does not limit players based on their winnings. Every player has the same limits, unlike other books who do limit winning players. I encourage every one of you guys to download and explore all the different sports betting apps available and see it for yourself. Compare the lines from each sports book. That's what's great about Circa is they're transparent and they stay in front of those things. Great customer service, real people behind the Circa Sports brand who resolve issues in a timely fashion, unlike other sports books who use those chat bots that no one likes. All aspects of the app are being run by the same team that runs the main Circa Sportsbook at Circa Resort and Casino in Las Vegas. Like I said, with the amazing layout of TVs and pools they have on, at their casino and resort. Definitely excited to see that here soon. Download the Circa Sports Illinois app at circasports.com/Illinois-app to sign up today. Also be on the lookout for Circa events, watch parties, and tailgates. They're always jumping into some of our watch parties and tailgates as well. And we appreciate their partnership. So if you or someone you may know has a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or text GAMB to 833-234 or visit areyoureallywinning.com. All right, we're moving on here to the second segment here on CHGO Bears After Dark, and wanted to bring in our guy Jake Flannigan, who is he's part of Meatball Island. He's a big member. Yeah, you live on Meatball Island, Jake, and everybody kind of gives me the meatball honors, but I you've definitely surpassed me this year. You've picked the Bears to win every week of the season. That's a meatball honor that I haven't even, because now I'm a jaded media member, and I got guys like Mark Carman just driving me down every day to be cynical, and I can't get lost in the meatball sauce. But you've stayed true to that honor, and for that, sir, I salute you.
Hey, thanks. After that start to the season, why not just pick the Bears to win every game? I typically wouldn't do that in past seasons, but and try to kind of call it as I see it. But it's been a weird year, and I think that's a big thing I want to talk through tonight. I don't want to talk about the bullshit. I just want to talk about the Bears. And I want to talk about why there's this weird thought of a standard of a high level or a perfection level. Like you got to have a better standard, a bigger standard than we have. Right. And that we all understand that. But when it comes to this quarterback and it comes to Justin Fields, anyone out there that watched that game and believes that he was the reason they didn't win that game doesn't know football, period. If you want to believe that drafting a quarterback is a better future for this organization and that will lead us to a Super Bowl quicker in a better way, I can understand that. I'm coming around to the idea of that, but I still think it's foolish to not invest and continue to invest in Justin Fields with more assets around him, more talent around him, better coaching. And if you don't do that, we're not taking advantage of the most talented and gifted athlete, player, whatever, that the Bears have ever had since Walter Payton. And when you put it like that, turning your back on him now and before you get to next season and the more talent around him with the perfect, go through all this bullshit to get to this moment of this coming off season into next year. And if we give up on him now, what was it all for? Just so we could argue on social media and talk about it on shows? That's where I'm at, Braggs. I'm pissed off yesterday. I was really pissed off, and I get it. Like he was not a reason they won yesterday, but he was not the reason they lost. And that's a trend that has happened too much, and I get it. It creates the frustration, but like, Jesus.
Yeah, I get it. And we probably should have sent you to Cleveland because you were at the Detroit game. They won that game. Maybe we should have kept the mojo going and made you go out to Cleveland to bring back and secure the W. But yeah, I understand where you're coming from. I wanted you to give you an outlet to vent your frustrations, give you a little bit of a therapy session. And I know a lot of Bears fans here that are tuned into the chat feel the same way. So please hit that like button while you're hanging out here as we go through our meatball therapy session here on CHGO Bears After Dark. But yeah, I get it. And a lot of Bears fans feel the same way. A lot of Bears fans want to just stick with Justin Fields.
Yep.
Corey Wootton wants to stick with Justin Fields. DJ Moore wants to stick with Justin Fields and just keep building this roster. And I'm not going to fight that. Like, as much as I say, okay, I think they should go this way or they will go this way.
Sure.
I'm not, they may, but I'm not going to fight this scenario that you guys are drawing up. And, you know, we get a lot of emotional fighting in our chats daily during the Bears shows. Even right now, you know, and the opinions are so far polar opposites of each other that it becomes a lot of infighting between Bears fans about what this team should do. And I just continue to try to bang the drum that whatever decision they make, this team is going in the right direction. Yeah. This roster is getting built in a great way. All of a sudden, the Chicago Bears lead the league in interceptions.
That's right.
What? How did that happen? Because before Montez Sweat got here, I don't think they had any turnovers. They couldn't generate a sack. Now they're getting pass rush. They're getting to the quarterback. They're creating turnovers. They're looking. I mean, I stand on it. I said it during the game, and I had some people going, "Oh, look at you now," because I compared this defense not to the 2018 Bears, who are the most recent defensive success. I compared them to the Lovie Smith Bears,
sure,
who were great over a 10-year span.
Forcing turnovers and flipping the field and changing the game in a dynamic way. And I said the same thing. I think I threw a Macho Man Randy Savage gif out when I did it. It just, in that moment, it felt like the Bears defense was back. And then, of course, what happens, right? We play too conservative down the stretch on offense, awful fucking play calling, awful execution. And then the defense, who had stood on their fucking head. Sorry, man, I'm really swearing a lot. I can't help it.
That's fine.
But I can.
It's after dark.
They're standing on their head the entire game, doing everything they can. And then at the end, they can't stop that Njoku 3rd and 15, right? And that I mean, Amari Cooper had a great play too down the sideline. And like both of those plays, like it's so frustrating when that occurs. And it's crazy because like on other plays, Jalen Johnson getting his jersey held, like wasn't called. The Njoku thing, which was a touchdown earlier in the game, right? He gets 1 foot down, he gets his toes down.
Yep.
But then he brings it down the heel and it's out of bounds, but the toe was in. It's like, I get it. That was a touchdown. Fine. But like the fact that it was that close and that it could have went the other way and it didn't, so many of those things piled up. And we're not even talking about what happened on the offensive side of the ball. But it's just incredibly infuriating, and I know everyone else is. But I cannot wait when the day comes when we have Bears win stacked on top of Bears win next to your bricks and stacked with another Bears win and another brick and another Bears win. And every week on these shows and on social, everyone's just going to talk about how could we have won better? How could we have won more convincingly? What can we do to prepare ourselves for the postseason? How great is this postseason run going to be? How awesome is it going to be to have a parade come right downtown and the Bears are Super Bowl champs? Because that's going to happen. Yep. And I really believe it's going to happen sooner than later. But we got to stay the course, make the adjustments that are necessary. They may be big moves, but the core of players who are talented and doing their job, you've got to lock up. And I know who all those names are. You've been talking about them on defense, and you got to build around it. We're not that far away. And I know some people believe we are. And that's your opinion, man. And that's fine. But guess what? My opinion is I've seen a lot of Bears football over the years, and that was a good team that we watched play a number 1 defense in the league, and they stuck with them toe-to-toe, and they were the better team on the field for over 3 quarters, and then they lost the game. And we've seen that happen 3 times this year. They win any of those games right now, we're talking still about how this team is a playoff contender. If they win 2 out of 3 of those games, we're talking about, hey, if you really look at the teams in the playoffs, is there a juggernaut team that the Bears couldn't maybe get hot and make a run? I don't know. Like, I'm telling you, man, I'm in a real weird way right now with this whole Bears thing.
I love the energy because, like, it's funny because Corey Wootton, you know, most known for ending Brett Favre's career with his ferociousness. I felt like he was easier to contain. Like, I could get at him a little bit about the field stuff. And I was making it a personal challenge today to hold both your feet to the fire on
Bring
this.
it. Tell me what you want. Tell me why you want Caleb Williams and Drake May. Bring him to Chicago, man. Tell me. Yeah. I can't wait to see that. Let's see that play out again. Can't wait. It's going to be awesome.
Well, I do think that if they were to bring in a rookie quarterback, because everybody goes, it's just going to go through the circle of failure that this Bears team and franchise has gone through my entire childhood and life. I was born 2 months after the Bears won a Super Bowl, so I've never really experienced sustained success here as a Chicago Bears fan, and I've never seen sustained success on offense ever in my lifetime. Flashes in the pan at times. Yeah. But I do think it is different this time. I do think that if they were to draft, and I want Caleb Williams, like I don't know how to feel about Drake May. I think he has a dynamic arm, 6'4", 230 or whatever he is. He's got, he's got the intangibles. I think it's lazy to compare him to Mitch Trubisky, but at the same time, as somebody that really understands the storylines and pressure that players walk into, for Drake May to have to come into this city after what happened to Mitch Trubisky and try to follow Justin Fields with all of that wrapped into one ball, that's a lot of pressure for a rookie quarterback. And it makes me uncomfortable to even think about that potential. Now, Caleb Williams, it's a little different. He's been in the spotlight as a Heisman Trophy winner. He's getting a lot of criticism this year for everything he's doing. Justin Fields gets a lot of criticism. Well, Caleb Williams has, he's painting his nails. He's crying with his mom. He's missing the media sessions after games. He's getting heat right now as a college quarterback. So, I think he might be a little more prepared for what's to come here in Chicago with the same amount of, nitpicking criticisms that we tend to do, as we follow along this team. So, I do want them to draft Caleb Williams, and I do think that it would be a more conducive atmosphere to develop him. Now, there are conditions to that statement. Luke Getsy
change, Braggs?
Yeah, Luke Getsy should not be calling plays next year, whether it's for Justin Fields or he should exactly. I want to promise that, but I can't guarantee it either. Yeah, because I've said for 2 years that I think Ryan Poles has a great poker face, so I really can't get a read on how they're going to approach this. It seems obvious to me that Luke Getsy shouldn't be here next year. It seems obvious to me that they should move on from Matt Eberflus. I think they have an off season of where a perfect storm is set up on a silver platter for them, with Jim Harbaugh begging to come back to the NFL, our coaching spot opening up with the number 1 pick and an opportunity to build this franchise however you want, Jim Harbaugh, however you want. And I think he's the one guy that I think could bring this fan base together before the results even occur, because he's the type of guy that has the credibility to where if he comes in and says, I'm keeping Justin Fields, even the hardest critics against Justin that I talk to on a daily basis say, I'll take that deal. I'll take Jim Harbaugh. And if that's what he decides, I'll roll with it. So, but then I also think it goes the other way. If he were to come in and take Caleb Williams, I think the people that feel strongly about Fields would trust Jim Harbaugh's evaluation of what he wants to do at the quarterback position. So I do think coaching is a huge importance to talking about a conducive environment to developing the next young quarterback to come in here. Yeah. So they're a center. We know they need a center. We've talked about this. Adam Hogue's been talking about
Cody Whitehair would be a great center if he could snap.
Yeah.
But he's fine post snap. He just can't snap the ball.
I don't even
know. It's kind of important for that job requirement.
I don't even know if he's fine post snap. Honestly,
He is at center, not at guard. Like that's actually one of the things from yesterday's game that I've been thinking about more and more. One of the biggest reasons the Bears may have not been able to finish off the Browns in yesterday's game was the fact that Tevin Jenkins wasn't able to finish that game, and they were going with Whitehair and Lucas Patrick, right? Up the middle. And then the conservative game plan of trying to come up the middle on that is like you got two of offensive linemen that I'm not thrilled about there trying to get yourself a couple of yards, some tough yards and advance the sticks. And, you know, I would have even considered moving Borum in at left guard just for the fact of like, I think he'd be better than Whitehair for the rest of the game. And I don't even know if that's even a possibility. I know I'm talking crazy now because he's a tackle, but like,
right. It's
just like if Tevin Jenkins stays in that game, I feel like the Bears advance the sticks a couple times and maybe there's a little less of the 3-and-out bullshit. But here's the issue. The root of the problem is still going to be the play calling, right?
Right.
But I do keep it in a perspective. They were going up against one of the best defenses in the league. So like, I'm not going to completely kill, you know, the offensive coordinator here, even though it was a big reason for them not winning that game yesterday. But I actually think about this. I'm coming around on the Jim Harbaugh idea. Initially, I was like, I don't know if I want that craziness in Chicago. But you know what? Maybe that kind of craziness is just what we need because he'd fit right in with the rest of us, right? So maybe that's it. We need Jim Harbaugh as the Bears head coach. But that would require a lot of change. And a lot of change kind of all of a sudden, right? Which we've talked about this before. It's only happened 2 times in the past in Chicago Bears coaching history. Where the coaches only lasted 2 years. I think it was Mark Trestman and then one other coach between Hallis's stints. So this is it's not unprecedented, but it does not happen often. I feel it's more than likely Matt Eberflus will get a 3rd year.
I agree.
Luke Getsy will likely be gone. There will be a new offensive coordinator come in. What I fear is all that happens and then Justin Fields is gone. The team and polls in the front office does their job and just keeps loading this roster up with great players like Tyreek Stevenson, among others. And I love Dexter. I love Javon Dexter. I think he's going to continue to develop. I just think, and we know Darnell Wright on the other side of the ball, right? But like, it's going to be right there, and they were going to make that change at quarterback at the very wrong time because it's been a theme year after year, decade after decade. It's this Bears team gets everything right. You got the right coach. You got the right defense. You got the right quarterback, but you got the bad offensive line. And then you get the receivers, but the offensive line is there. Then the offense comes together and you have those receivers in the running game and the quarterback. And then the defense kind of ages out, right? It's like so many times that happens over the course of the last 20 years. And I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. I'm really...
I don't blame you. It has been frustrating watching, you know, you plug one hole in the sinking ship and then water starts shooting out the other hole. Right. And they've never had everything come together. But I do feel like that moment is upon us where it could. And that's why it's such a big decision for Ryan Poles this offseason. And I'm not going to pretend like what I'm saying is the right answer, or I can't even say any of this stuff with 100% confidence or certainty that what I'm saying is the way to go. I just, it is a tough decision. And I agree with you. I think I have a hard time seeing the Bears losing this Sunday. I think they'll, you know, at home against Arizona,
right.
You know, and this defense playing the way it has, you know, and the offense unlikely to play as bad as they did against Cleveland. It's a law of averages thing, in my opinion. And you're at home playing dome team from Arizona all the way back in Chicago on a Christmas Eve, you know, afternoon. And same goes the next week. They play Atlanta. So you start to add a couple wins to this schedule. Now, if they lose out, I think that really ups the ante that Eberflus is gone.
For sure.
But if they win one more game, they have 6 wins off the 3 wins last year. If they win 2 more games, now you're delving into an area where they win 7 games.
And that's your threshold, right? For happiness.
It was my threshold before the season. I said, that is the bottom line of acceptance I would have had for this team is at 7.
Acceptance. Yeah.
And you never, when you say it before the season, you forget about what the context of that may entail. And you never in a million years could envision a scenario that they would lose some of the games that they have in such embarrassing fashion. But you forget that. It's like amnesia. It's like football amnesia. You go through every offseason and you forget that that's how these games, that's how the cookie crumbles in these games.
Right.
And there is no, they were like today on the afternoon show with Herb Howard and Adam Hogan, Mark Harmon, they were trying to say, well, what loss was a good loss this year? And you're going to be hard pressed to find good losses. Maybe the only one, the Vikings, because Justin Fields got hurt, and you can just kind of chalk that up and say that's an understandable loss. I don't, maybe the Saints game, because you're playing with a backup quarterback and
Sure.
Your expectations shouldn't be as high for a game
Not
like
the
that.
Chargers loss, not the Bucks loss.
Right.
Those sucked. The Packers loss. That
Packers
sucked.
loss was an embarrassment.
And we know that the Detroit, the Denver, and now the Cleveland losses, those are not acceptable.
Right. So that's what exactly. And so if you get to 7 wins and you're able to sit there and go, well, then these 3 other games that we're all going to blame Luke Getsy on now.
Yeah,
because he's going to be the sacrificial lamb, which I'm fine with. I agree with you. I think because we talk about Harbaugh, and that's a dream scenario, and I see a lot of people in the chat getting fired up like that's not happening. I get it. It's a long shot. I think it's ridiculous that it's sitting here again on a silver platter. Jim Harbaugh tried to get in the NFL last year with the Vikings. Do you think he wouldn't want to coach in Chicago, a city that he played quarterback in and fan base that still reveres him? We're talking about him here on this podcast. Of course, I think he would want to come to Chicago. The other aspect being, would the Bears want him is the more important question. But we can move off of that pipe dream scenario. And I agree with you. I think Matt Eberflus will be here next year. I just said they lead the league in interceptions all of a sudden. Right. I guarantee if you look at their metrics since Montez Sweat has joined, they're one of the best defenses in football. I don't even have to find the stats to feel very confident in saying that. They're getting to the quarterback. They're making plays.
For sure.
And so that's exciting and a big reason why I'm encouraged about the future of this team. So I think Matt Eberflus will be here. As I keep predicting, I think it'll be Frank Reich, the fired head coach from Carolina that comes here, a coach that was a part of a Super Bowl staff in Philadelphia who understands the quarterback position. And, he's not going to get a head coaching job more than likely after what's happened in Indianapolis and in Carolina, but he has a relationship with Matt Eberflus. To me, that's a pretty seamless fit. And I know most people are going to say, hell no. Well, a lot of times it's about who you know in the coaching tree and not always about what you know. And we've learned that here in Chicago. So that relationship, I think, is why I'm predicting that. So now then it comes down to the quarterback position, and we don't know. We've talked about this here as far as what they're going to do. But again, I do think that is more of a conducive environment to develop a quarterback. As long as Luke Getsy is gone, you have a guy in Frank Reich who has not only head coaching experience, but play calling experience and an understanding of the quarterback position and has developed quarterbacks in this league. He has a resume. And again, I knew it was coming, but people are very hell no. I get it. I've seen a lot of people bring up Greg Roman. I think Greg Roman is probably our best at OC and then invest in a pass scheme coach, but Roman can scheme pass better than Getsy. Knowledge untamed in the chat saying that. I don't disagree with that. I've been saying bring Greg Roman in here since week 4. He's coaching a high school team right now in Pennsylvania or something. Like like I would
probably should have.
Right.
Did Frank Reich does he get credit for Carson Wentz's development, or is that more Doug Peterson?
Well, I mean, I think it's a package deal, right? I mean, and are you saying that in a negative way?
I'm being a little bit of a,
because Carson was on an MVP trajectory, and then
he was. Yeah. Something didn't go right there, right?
Well, you know what went wrong is the first day he walked into Philly, he didn't sign that kid's autograph as he got off the airplane, and then those guys gave him shit about that. You don't do that in Philly. So I think
that's why George always drives to the airport to make sure first impressions are where they need to be.
Yes, exactly.
So hey, I'll say this though. It's another weird feeling, but like my assessment of the Matt Eberflus situation this year, it's odd for me to really truly give it a fair criticism. I don't know how to phrase it, really, to be quite honest with you, because this is how I feel. I believe that the off the field and out of the coaching room bullshit that he had to deal with in his head coaching role and the organization had to deal with for coaches that he brought in on his staff,
Yep.
like that's on him. And I think that negatively impacted this team. I really do.
Yep.
Sometimes you can't predict those things, and that's not completely on him. But 1 strike, 2 strike, some of those are significant, right?
And you had an opportunity. Look at in Philly. They just Sean Desai, who is the defensive coordinator, they just sat him down now for Matt Patricia to be the defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
This is a team heading to the playoffs, Super Bowl last year, have Super Bowl aspirations this year. They weren't shy, and I know the players were pretty vocal about replacing him, but they weren't shy to make that move.
Right.
And that's what
the Bills with Dorsey.
Right.
Yeah.
The Bills with Dorsey again. And the Bears are sitting here on their hands.
Right.
After you lose to Denver, after the way you got the doors blown off you in Kansas City, and you got your franchise quarterback saying that coaching is part of the problem of why he's not feeling comfortable in Chicago. Matt Eberflus had every opportunity right there to get rid of Luke Getsy. And maybe the Denver loss doesn't happen. Maybe the Detroit loss doesn't happen. Maybe the Cleveland loss doesn't happen if you are a little more sharp with your coaching standards and what is beneath you.
But I didn't do a good job of making a succinct point. My point was this. I think because of all that BS that he had to navigate with the coaching staff and for this team, that there was some sort of agreement. There was an understanding the rest of the season for the best stability of this team. And I think, that may actually be the right decision when you're sitting in that spot. It hasn't played out that way, but I think you're talking one play in 3 games that could go a different way. And maybe we don't feel the same way. I think we all feel like, hey, the play calling could be better for sure, but I don't think it would have as much vitriol. But what I was trying to get was to give Matt Eberflus some credit, because I think he had to navigate all that stuff towards the beginning of the season. And I think it was noticeable how much that impacted him, whether that was in Tampa or moving through the next few games. Like, he was going through some stuff that he had to deal with for a whole team.
Yep.
And I think once things settled down and he took that breath and he did take charge of the defense, like, we've seen what Matt Eberflus is as an NFL coach, especially as a defensive coordinator. And you know what? He's a damn good defensive coordinator, period. Yep. So no matter what happens, whether he's let go and Ryan Poles has to make that decision or he moves on somewhere else, no matter what happens this season or next, like, I will give him his credit for that. Yep. But there's a big difference from being a great defensive coordinator and being a great head coach. And we don't need just a great defensive coordinator in Chicago. We need a great head coach. And it's been really hard to find one.
Yep, it definitely has. And I think he has improved, just as I've acknowledged that Justin Fields has improved from his first 17 games to his last 17 games of his career. I think Matt Eberflus has improved even throughout this season.
Agreed.
From the start to the end. I'm a little disappointed with how they came out the gates. And as you mentioned, there were things going on behind the scenes that I think maybe played a part in that. I don't blame him for whatever happened with Alan Williams, whatever happened with the running backs coach. I think that's a hard thing to put on his table when you can't, like, at the end of the day, people come to work and they have a different life behind the scenes that you're not always going to know about. So, but at the same time, the way he handled it after the fact wasn't pretty. He didn't look organized at all. And I'm sure it took him by surprise, but at the same time, like, hey man, you got to lead by example, and not showing a calm demeanor and being a little more precise in what you're saying to the media, you're making matters worse. And he did that. The Chase Claypool thing, I definitely can still lay at his table, because we all understood he was having issues with the coaching staff. It was well reported and documented as we were heading into training camp. Then he starts to get in fights at training camp with Tyreek Stevenson. Our guys here reported on that from the practice field. And, so there was plenty of red flags that were going up, and then the season starts and he's not showing effort. And you had an opportunity to set the tone and set the standard for what you want this team to do with your hits philosophy, and you let them keep playing. And it got worse to the point that you had to trade him for basically nothing. And so that's still a part of his resume. So I know Ryan Poles is going to talk about, fighting through adversity and things like that. And he has, but these things aren't wiped off his whatever this evaluation is for Matt Eberflus. But again, I do agree that he's eventually going to, I think they will retain him. So it'll be interesting to see it all play out. It's a lot of tough decisions. So I think Ryan Poles has built a healthy roster, has set this franchise up for the future with salary cap opportunity, draft equity opportunity. But the two biggest decisions still remain with what he's going to do at head coach and quarterback, whether he wants to stick with the guys he has or replace one or two or both of them. So, it's exciting. It's nerve-wracking. We've been down this road so many times where it hasn't worked out. But at the same time, when we talked about when can this team ever have everything come together at the right time, I think that opportunity is presenting itself here this offseason. And that excites me, as disappointing as yesterday was and as disappointing as some of these losses have been and the way they came out the gates this season. So light at the end of the tunnel. I am always going to look at things from an optimistic point of view, even through the toughest times as a Bears fan, or a Chicago sports fan for that matter. So I don't know, I appreciate your passion towards it, and you echo a lot of sentiments. Everybody knows how much I'm in spaces, as they call it on Twitter, where we have long-winded conversations about all this stuff. And I understand that there's, an attachment to Justin Fields and wanting it to work out here, not just from a emotional fan standpoint, but from some of the points you made as far as the correct way of roster building and potential for that. So I see it all. It's just
moving. It's moving in the right direction. Answer me this though. Help me out too with the name. First situation. We're talking like negative or questionable decisions from Ryan Poles since he started. Like let's hit some of those. I know we've talked about them at length before, but like right out of the gate, help me with the name Larry Ogunjobi. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay, so that happened. That wasn't great. But I did like how immediately he's like, got to do this. Not a good look. This isn't a good look on me, but I'm going to do it. I made a decision. This was not right, so got to move quick. And he did it. The Roquan Smith thing, not a big fan of. Really didn't like that. As times when I've understood it, I still don't know if I think it's the right decision. But in my eyes, it's still one that maybe is questionable. And then the Chase Claypool one, no doubt, is a mistake. It was not good. It set us back a bit. Sure, we have draft capital, but having that roster space and having the plan in place to count on him to do his job and to do well, it was not beneficial to the growth of this team. And not accounting for maybe a different acquisition. It's similar to the Velus Jones situation in my eyes, which we're coming off of a decent Velus Jones game, so I won't dig in too deep on him today. But those are the three that really stick out for me. Would you agree with those three?
Yep.
Okay. So now we look back. How many of those have occurred since the start of the calendar year? So this whole year, we're almost through this year, right? How many of those occurred prior to the start of this year?
The decision on those guys,
all three of those,
right? Because like the Claypool thing,
it persisted, no doubt.
Yeah,
but all three of those decisions, which in my opinion, again, were not the best, but I understood one of the three. Whatever, those occurred previous to the start of this year. So from January 1st on, I'm all in on trusting Ryan Poles and his decision making and drafting and off-season plan. And sticking with Justin Fields.
Look at Jaquan Brisker versus George Pickens. Something awesome. Bears fans, pounded their head against the wall about for a year and a half now. George Pickens, don't be surprised when the Steelers trade him this offseason for as much effort as he's showing and not getting through the tough times in Pittsburgh. How would he be handling it here in Chicago?
Don't trade a second-round pick for George Pickens. I'm just going to say that.
Yeah, no, I signed off on the Claypool trade. I will not be making that
same.
the same
I was
mistake.
wanting it too. I thought it would work out.
Second.
I'm not saying that's the other thing. And I don't know how much more I will go forever.
We can
tonight,
go as long as
or
you
whatever. All I will say is this. It is really easy up here to say this is the way it should be. I know best, no doubt about it. This will work, but you're never saying that. You agree, like, hey, this is just how you feel. This is your opinion. Everyone has their opinion, and I'll just say this: I'm not going to be right on all this stuff. I was wrong on several things in the past. I don't give a shit about that, though. All I care about is that the Bears do the most right things to put them in a position to be the best team in the division, to be a playoff contender every single year, and then to go to the Super Bowl and win it, and then do it again, and do it again, and do it again. And that's what I think as Bears fans, we just need to get past. Who's right? Who's wrong? This one's right. This is my truth right now. This is how I feel, and this is what I believe is the best path for the Bears to do that. And I think we all can agree on the end goal. And you know what? It's not going to go exactly how all of us believe it will go or want it to go, and that's okay. So listen, I care more about the Bears and them winning than I do about Justin Fields being the quarterback of the Bears. I believe gives them the best chance to get there quicker, and I think he is one of the most dynamic players I've ever seen in my life. If he's not a part of the long-term future and that decision's made this offseason, I'm not going to like it, but you know what? I'm going to have to accept it. I'm going to overcome it, and we're going to get behind who is there, and we're going to move forward together. We're going to win.
Our guy Robbie in the chat says, you will root for the next guy they bring in and you will like it.
That's right. I will, because that's what I've been doing my entire life. And that's what makes it so frustrating in this moment, is because I feel like we've been through it, not just this tenure, not just the previous regime, not the Cutler crap, not the stuff before that, not before that, and before that, and before that. It's literally the entire existence as Bears fans have been through this. And I'm telling you right now, this guy is the guy who can take us there with what is correct around him as we add to it in the right play calling. I'm telling you, I know it in my heart of hearts.
Well, and
it may not happen.
And so we've talked a lot about the fan emotional side of things, because that's
I emotional.
Yes. No, but that's what we're tapping into. And I like that. This is a place I'm very comfortable in talking about, is the sports psychology of things, because I understand why we react the way we do to things in sports, and listening to fans have their same, reactions as well. But what holds a little more water is the players in the locker room. We just heard from Corey Wootton, who feels very strongly a certain way. And I'm sure if he was playing on this team, that's how he'd feel in the locker room as well. And we heard here last night, immediately following the game, yes, it's a question being asked to him, but he does have the decision to temper down the way he answers it, not answer it at all. And DJ Moore, who's a star on this team, if not the biggest star on this team, a huge trade acquisition. He understands his standing in this franchise and Chicago Bears organization. Like I phrased it on Twitter and had some pushback from fans that I thought he was putting Ryan Poles on Front Street by saying Justin Fields is better than the two quarterbacks coming out next year.
Sure.
And he was talking about Caleb Williams and Drake May. Now, how much he's actually watched those guys, who knows? But at the end of the day, DJ Moore understands the power of his words through the media. And you could say, oh, well, it's just in the moment. It's after the game. Somebody's asking him a question. He's sick of answering it. Well, he went on 670 The Score this morning with Mully and Haw and doubled down on those sentiments. Yeah. And if you don't think he understands that he's putting his GM in a spot. Now, I don't think Ryan Poles is ever going to make a decision based off of the players' feelings towards a player. He didn't with Roquan.
And I don't think DJ meant to do that, but I think he did do that. Yeah,
he did. And that's exactly my point. And Darnell Mooney, I think, said something similar to that effect today as well. So that's the other hurdle that Ryan Poles is going to have to overcome with this decision, is how it affects the locker room, how the players reciprocate that. And I think at the end of the day, it's a results-driven business. And if he makes a decision one way or the other, It's got to work out, because this is what affects the other players on the team and their money, their future contracts and earnings in this league going forward. So like for you, Jake, like when you hear DJ Moore talk about that, like how much do you think that ups the ante on the pressure of Ryan Poles having to make this decision this offseason?
To be quite honest, I don't think that it adds that much pressure, because I don't think Ryan Poles folds to random criticism that's out there in the ether. I think Ryan Poles has a specific plan for how he wants to attack building this roster, committing to players that earn, contracts, and he has a certain number we always talk about. And I think he also does have an element of my gut feeling on things. So that's what gives me hope heading into this offseason, because I think he'll factor all those things in. I also think he's someone who listens to his front office and the people that he's put in place around him. But in the end, he also realizes that at the end of the season, at the end of whenever his time comes, he'll be judged on the big decisions that he makes. And other people will be contributing factors to that, but ultimately it comes down to him. And he's got to make those calls. And I think one of those elements could be considering, hey, our star receiver that we traded the first pick for, likes playing for Justin Fields. If it was the opposite, maybe that would really negatively impact it. So I don't think it hurts it, Braggs. And I'm not saying it doesn't have any
it's got to have an element in
it can't be a negative impact though. So that's a positive. I'll say that. I just don't know how significant it is to him.
Because I think like what I tried to tell somebody is like, he understands the impact of his words.
Yeah.
He understands that Ryan Poles has this decision coming. There's no way that DJ Moore's cousins or friends or whoever aren't texting him about this stuff as well.
Sure.
And I'm sure he's just at a point where he's sick of talking about it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, to then put that quote out there and a video clip out there, if the day comes that they draft Caleb Williams, in late April 28th or whatever it's going to be, you don't think that that the media, not just local media, you don't think national media is going to turn that clip around faster than your head can spin and go, DJ, how do you feel now? I mean, that's a big decision for DJ Moore to not only say it yesterday, but then say it again this morning.
Hey, I agree. Like, I think for DJ Moore, the question how you phrased it to me was Ryan Poles. For DJ Moore, I think it takes a lot for him to say that and go out on that and then double down and say it again the next morning, like you said. Like, I think that's great for him to do that and to stand behind his quarterback, because he doesn't have to do that. So the fact that he did, I think, is meaningful. Just how much does that play into what Ryan Poles ultimately decides? I don't know. But I do think the fact that there's positive relationships there, and that, like, Justin Fields is not necessarily a polarizing teammate, right? He's not someone who's, I'm either in on him or I'm out on him. He's a bad dude. He rubs us the wrong way. Like, what? Like, his teammates love who he is, right? He's a great person. He's a great player. He's in a not so great situation, but he's continued to try to rise above it the best he can.
Yep.
And I think that's where they're at right now, and that's where he's at. And I don't envy Fields. Like, if I said this like a month ago, if I was Justin Fields at this point, I don't know if I'd want to be with the Chicago Bears next season and beyond. I probably would want to go somewhere else where there would be a little bit more hope and a little bit more of a, hey, fresh start. Let's go with this and let's see where this goes. And I think it maybe that's what happens, and it ends up being a benefit to Justin Fields and his development as a quarterback and his overall career when it's all said and done. And maybe it does benefit the Bears, and overall we're able to move forward. And Caleb Williams is a juggernaut that leads the Bears to the Super Bowl.
Well, that's where
his second season. But
and that's
I
where
don't know if that's going to play out that way.
Well, and that's where I try to tell people there is an element of how far he is in his development, or if he can ever get to certain levels of his development, but it's also about timing. When you juxtapose it against a number one pick and then an upcoming contract for Justin Fields. Real quick, before we get into that point, Palokas says, what is DJ supposed to say, Braggs? Of course, he's going to say he likes Justin. He's going to say he likes whoever the quarterback is. I understand that, but he doesn't need to also add in, he's better than the two quarterbacks coming out this year.
I love it.
That's the fuel on the fire. Of course he can go, Justin's my guy. I'm going to ride with QB1 all day long. I don't watch college football, so I don't have any comment about those guys, is what he could have also said. He didn't. He then pushed his chips across the table and said, yeah, he is better than those two guys. So I think that is something of note and not to be understated. And I think a soft-spoken leader like DJ Moore saying that, you're going to start hearing more players follow his lead and the people that feel strongly for Justin Fields. And there's a lot of those players in that locker room. And I think that will only add to the pressure of this decision. But going back to, the contract situation, when you talk about Justin Fields and being maybe going to someone maybe doesn't want to be here, that's a point I've made a million times. Like, look at how this whole situation with Jalen Johnson is breaking down. Maybe now he's feeling a little better about being in Chicago, but I would have said 5 weeks ago, he don't want to be here. Why would he? Right. Think about how a contract situation and negotiation is going to go with some of these players. And let's just talk about Justin Fields. Same thing's happening with Jalen Johnson. You're walking into a negotiation room with Ryan Poles and you're saying, well, this is my value. I think my value is, and Ryan Poles was like, well, let's pull up your stats. Let's look at the production. Let's look at the tape. Let's see what it says on film. And Jalen Johnson sitting there going, well, wait a minute. We didn't have a pass rush last year. We had the 10 sacks from our defensive line, the lowest in Chicago Bears franchise history. We don't have a pass rush. How am I supposed to get productive? Oh, look, Montez Sweat is here. And now I'm the cornerback I've always said I was going to be. So now you're going to pay up for me. I'm not
Context matters.
I'm not giving you a hometown discount because you've sabotaged my numbers for 2 years because you haven't put a roster around me. What do you think Justin Fields is going to say? If Daniel Jones is getting a 4 or 5 year deal for $40+ million, you think he's going to walk in a negotiation room and Ryan Poles is going to be like, well, Justin, we like you and you're a leader and, you have made strides, but we want to pay you less than Daniel Jones. No, he's not getting paid less than Daniel Jones. Justin Fields will not accept that kind of a deal. He will not accept, what Jordan Love, the 2-year extension that Green Bay gave him because he hadn't played a game in 4 years. So Justin Fields walking to the negotiation room going, you guys have sabotaged my reputation. I've had to go through all this shit here. Yeah. The roster getting completely ripped down. I'm getting my head torn off. I can't get a call from the refs to save my life. Yeah. And now you want me to take a hometown discount to stay here as well? No, you're going to pay up for me if I'm going to stay here. I don't mind being here, but you're going to pay for it. That's the other aspect that I think people have to understand. And so then Ryan Poles could sit there and go, okay, well then what is your price? Justin's going to say $50 million a year. Why wouldn't he? He's going to start high and then you got to meet in the middle.
Sure.
But Ryan Poles, as we know, has his number. So you start going down that road and you start thinking about how that could play out. And, now you're looking, you have the number 1 pick and a guy that has a lot of talent, whether you believe in him in the chat or not, or you do, Jake, or anybody on Twitter. At the end of the day, there's a lot of teams that literally will kill to have Caleb Williams, will literally potentially give up 3 first-round picks and Max Crosby to get Caleb Williams. So obviously there's intrigue for how good his potential could be. And the Bears are also going to have to consider that potential. Yeah. So when you try to balance the contract upcoming for Fields and this decision, that I think is a very strong point to this conversation.
Listen, I wish Justin Fields wasn't as good and dynamic as he is, because then it would be an easy decision for me.
Yes.
But the problem is he's still not fully baked. And when he is, it's going to be the sweetest thing that anyone's ever seen. And you know what?
It's going to be like hero bread.
It is. It will be. But I'm not, like I said earlier, I get it. Caleb Williams, I do like a lot of things about his game, and I do think he can be a successful NFL quarterback, maybe even a top 5 type of quarterback. But I also believe Justin Fields is that guy, and I know most people don't, and that's okay. He's not yet. And he is, while not the reason they lost that game, he is not a reason that they won it either. And I want to see more in the situation, third quarter, fourth quarter, running down, here's the play call. This is what we're supposed to do. And I want to see a big middle finger to the sideline. I won't do it, but and I want to say, hey, audible, we're checking out of this shit because it's not going to work, because we've seen this not work, and we got to figure something else out. And I want him to control the destiny of the team in the game and his own, because I trust more that he, now in year 3, has seen enough to determine in this moment, of all the plays I know in my mind and that this team has practiced and knows together collectively, this offense is most successful if we adjust out of this and into this because of what we're seeing from the defense. And the thing is, I feel more confident in that than what a lot of times the play call are coming in from the sidelines, especially on third and fourth down. And that's just where I'm at with it. And it's got me to a point where I'm speaking at a high level right now. I'm jumping around and I'm flopping on my living room floor during the game because I'm so upset. And my wife and kids are like, why are you a kid one moment yelling in glee? And why are you dejected, yelling and screaming? Why is this happening a few minutes later? And you know what? Like, I should know better, right? But I can't help myself. I'm too far deep and I can't help it. Like, all of us are just sick in the head because we love football so much and we love the Bears. And I'm going to be sick in the head with this until the day that I die. And I hope that I've seen a few Super Bowls between this point and that point in time. And I believe that we will. But man, I can't express to you more. I saw that graphic about the first time in NFL history, a team a 10-plus point lead heading into the fourth quarter, and they had 3 times in the one season where they lost. Like, that stuff, it eats at me. And I've thought that I had grown to a point where after the double doink in 18, that I've seen everything and felt everything to a low. But really, like, in a weird way, my wife and I went to the game the previous week that you mentioned earlier, to the Lions game. We had the best seats of our lives, and it was amazing. And to beat the Lions and to see those fans just have slight teardrops come down their eyes. It was freezing at Soldier Field, and it was amazing. And that defense played so well. And DJ Moore had a hell of a game, right? Just to see that whole experience and to say, hey, Lions, I hope you do great in the playoffs. Good luck, because the rest of this decade, it's going to come through Chicago. And that's how I felt after that game. And then we come the next week and we're right there. You can't finish it off to keep the momentum going and to keep hope alive, as you have said so many times the last few weeks. And it's just like, why? Like, why can't you just keep hope alive and just execute these little things that will make a difference in the end? But you know what?
It's a game of inches. As Herb Edwards has always said, the difference between a 10-win team and a 6-win team is about 5 plays, and the Bears are going to embody that this season, quickly, and we'll try to round third and head home here on this. After Dark. No, I don't care. I literally, I'm going to be on Spaces for the next 6 hours, but I know you also need to get home. And but I do want to address some people in the chat and try to push back with some people. That's why I wanted to push back on Wootton, wanted to push back on you, Jake. I know how strongly you guys feel about this stuff, and I'm kind of more in the middle, willing to keep an open mind with both avenues. I've given what I think as far as a prediction will be, but doesn't mean that I'm rooting against Justin Fields in any way. I'm starting to feel like the writing's on the wall. Now, Stoney Montana says, I'm just not dumb enough to say someone who's never played an NFL snap nor finished the year strong against good opponents is better than Fields. And that's fair. I understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, I get into a position. Yeah, Caleb Williams isn't on the Bears, so I'm not rooting for him. But at the same time, I don't love how some Bears fans have kind of pivoted to picking apart Caleb Williams, but won't have that same kind of criticism for Fields. Yeah. It cuts both ways, and so if you can see through the mistakes and the excuses of, talent around him or Getsy holding him back, then you should be able to see those excuses through Caleb Williams as well. And you say, well, he hasn't finished the year strong. USC doesn't have a great roster. USC is a great college football school and has been for a long time, but go dig into their roster. Go look at, how they're playing. Go look at their defense giving up 50 points a game and try to understand what is on the shoulders of Caleb Williams to overcome all of that. Consider Caleb Williams on a team like the Ohio State Buckeyes when Justin Fields was there with 3 first-round wide receivers, top 10 wide receivers, an offensive line where a lot of the guys that were blocking for him are in the NFL. USC doesn't have offensive linemen that are going to be all over the NFL or wide receivers this year. They did have Jordan Addison last year, and Caleb Williams won Heisman. So consider those variables. Did Justin Fields have bad games in college? Yes. Northwestern, he struggled against. Mark will tell you, Justin Fields played amazing in college. He had amazing moments in big time games against Clemson that we all understand. And that's why we were excited when he got here. But I think that when Stoney says, look at what he's done this year in college, and this is why I think he's not better than Fields. I'm sorry. I think there's more context to it. And I'm sure this offseason, Adam Hogue and everybody that really breaks down the tape, Nick Moriano, Will DeWitt, Mark Carman, everybody here at CHGO and across all the different outlets are going to really break this down to its nth degree of, what he does well, what Drake May does well. But to sit here and say he's not, okay, yeah, Justin Fields is in the NFL. He's doing things like yesterday, that touchdown to Cole Kmet where he breaks out of a tackle with Myles Garrett. Can Caleb Williams do that? No. Nobody's as strong and fast, that combination, as Justin Fields to make a play like that.
Yeah.
But are there plays that Caleb Williams can make that maybe Justin Fields can't? Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with that.
There's nothing wrong with saying that. They're different types of quarterbacks. They're not exactly the same. Caleb Williams has a quick release. Caleb Williams, I've watched a lot of games of Caleb Williams the last few years. I've probably watched like 5 games of Drake Mays this year just to keep an eye on him. I'm not a tape expert, so I'm not going to pretend like I'm your quarterback guru here at CHGO Sports. But at the same time, I have watched enough Caleb Williams to tell you that he can make all the throws on the field, just like Justin Fields can make all the throws.
Yeah.
Is he a little better with some anticipation throws? Maybe. Is it at the college level and hard to assess how that'll transfer over in the NFL? Sure. While he's playing with subpar talent, at the NFL, he'd be playing with NFL talent, so that changes things. But he's also playing against some subpar talent, against teams like Tulane and other schools. He's not just playing, the toughest competition in Notre Dame and Utah every week, and he didn't play well in those games. So there's a bigger picture to all of this. And there are attributes that make Caleb Williams a good quarterback and could potentially be a better quarterback than Justin Fields. I'm not afraid to say that. And I'm not hating on Justin Fields by saying that.
Yeah.
So that's why this is such a tough decision for Ryan Poles.
Right.
And we're just going to have to wait. I don't know when that decision will get made in the offseason. I hope it's sooner, but I fear it's going to come all the way down to literally the 30 seconds before they make the pick, because
let's make a deal. How good is your offer? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, wait all the way until the night of the draft to see what team's going to panic, because I think if I tried to get in Ryan Poles' mind, he probably doesn't think Justin Fields is the worst quarterback ever.
Right.
And somebody that they could win with a great team around them, like San Francisco's got, or Philadelphia's got, or Miami Dolphins have.
Mm-hmm.
It's not all on the quarterback at those for those teams. But, I guess the question is how much, because I know how much Ryan Poles loves a good trade back. He showed that last year, wheeling and dealing to trade back to 10 and getting haul he got from Carolina. So, does he wait all the way into the night of the draft and see if the Raiders panic and give 3 first-rounders, 3 second-rounders, and Max Crosby? That's what I want from the Raiders personally. So I would wait. I would hold this decision hostage all the way until the night of the draft. That's not going to be great for our mental well-being here in the chat and on Twitter and everywhere else, but it'll be fun conversation nonetheless.
It will be. And I'll say this. I had 2 more quick things. One, I know you don't agree with. That's okay. But I'll still say it right now today. If I'm Ryan Poles, you run to the podium and you draft Marvin Harrison Jr. with your first pick, and I don't even care about any trade scenarios, about any future capital. And I
and
know that's just ridiculous. But
that's
you know what?
really
So is
pushing
he.
your chips in on Justin Fields. Then you're really like, if you keep
I'm all
Justin
in.
Fields, but you trade back for an insane haul, that's not pushing your chips as hard in as it would be to just draft Marvin Harrison Jr. instead of taking the haul.
Yeah, I'm in. I'm in. Just do it. Just do it.
Because you got Malik
hey,
Neighbors you could potentially take with the second first-round pick the Bears have.
Yeah, whatever, man. All I'm just saying, just do it. Just watch. Just watch.
Hey,
just watch.
You're preaching to the choir here. I've been dreaming of Marvin Harrison Jr. on this team for 3 years now.
I know that. I know you want him. It's just like how we acquire him, right? Or like how we where he would be selected, and given the situation, I do get what you're saying.
Two things happened that I didn't, because my meatball brain couldn't envision these two scenarios. I really did not anticipate the Bears struggling like they have, and the offense being up and down. I really thought Justin Fields was going to take the next step. Should I have acknowledged that it was likely that Justin Fields would get hurt this season? Yeah, I should. I don't like going into seasons predicting injury. I think that's just something. And of course, like, it'd have been one thing if he had hurt something he's hurt before. He hurt his freaking thumb, but it was on a play that he could have avoided, holding on to the ball too long. And that's part of the equation of why his development isn't as far. If he had played those 4 games, those were against 4 winnable teams. Maybe the Bears are in the playoff hunt because of that. As much as we harp against Denver, Detroit, and Cleveland failures, if Justin just throws that ball out of bounds against Minnesota, maybe they win against Minnesota. Maybe they win against the Chargers. Maybe they win. And that's another part of the equation when it comes to deciding on Justin Fields, is he hasn't been able to stay healthy. And while last year I wouldn't have put it on his fault, because I thought Luke Getsy was overusing, his Ferrari. This year, his injury was his fault, Justin's, for not getting rid of the ball. So, it's one of those things. So so to long story short, I didn't envision the scenario that Justin Fields wouldn't take the next step, wouldn't have around 3,200 yards passing, around 800 yards rushing, and 30 touchdowns, and set records and take a legitimate step forward. I just genuinely believed that was going to happen, and it hasn't, unfortunately, for a myriad of reasons we've come up with here tonight.
I was wrong too. I believe that as well,
and that's fine. I don't apologize for getting excited for the season. I wasn't being dishonest. I wasn't doing it for clicks. I genuinely believed that was what was going to happen. It felt like everything was falling into place. And once again, you'd think you'd learn here in Chicago sports that that's not how it never comes easy, but that's just the type of fan I am. I feel like you're the same way, Jake. The other thing that I didn't anticipate in the offseason was that the Panthers would be the worst team in football.
It's been awesome.
If you'd asked me, it's been amazing. It makes Ryan Poles look like a genius, but if you'd asked me during minicamp who was going to be I would have said the Panthers pick would be like in the top 10, maybe top 5.
Yeah,
but certainly wouldn't have been so audacious to say number 1. And some fans were saying that. So, it's interesting. And that's what's changed the equation of this conversation in a big way. If you look here for the NFL Tank Watch, Lawrence provided, helped me out here with this graphic here today. So shout out to Law Dog. The Bears via the Carolina pick still sit at the, number 1 pick. New England and Arizona both with 3 wins. More importantly, when it comes to this discussion, it's about strength of schedule. So tonight, Bears fans, we're rooting for the Eagles because they play the Seahawks, and strength of schedule is about common opponents. Interesting. But at number 5, with a lot of 5-win teams sitting next to them, hard to say if any of those teams will find a way to win here to end the year. But that's how things are shaking out right now. And at the end of the day, those are good, no matter how that breaks down, whether it's number 1 or number 2 pick, or at worst case scenario, the number 3 pick for that Carolina pick. And then the Bears pick being somewhere between 5 and 13, I think is where their window of best to worst scenarios when it comes to that. I guess they could jump into the top 5 if Washington won or whatever. But
before we wrap up, could I bring you back to 2023 season just for one moment?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if I'm not mistaken, our friends over at This Day in Chicago Sports post this. I don't know if it's completely accurate, but you tell me if I'm wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I have a 5-leg parlay here that could put the Bears in position heading into the Packers games to still be playoff relevant. Is that correct?
Wait, say that one more time. You got me confused.
If I've got a 5-leg parlay here in my own mind here of Bearsville, that if this occurs, the Bears can head into Week 18 in Green Bay with a shot at making the postseason. And then the first starts tonight.
Yep.
The Eagles beat the Seahawks, which is great because what you just said, it helps with the tankathon, right? It helps with draft position for next year, but it also helps with the Bears to potentially make the postseason. So Eagles beat the Seahawks tonight. Next week, the Bears, of course, beat the Cardinals. The Rams beat the Saints, and the Lions beat the Vikings.
Correct.
All things I think will happen. So we're heading into Week 17 with this needing to occur. The Bears beat the Falcons. Mm-hmm. The Giants beat the Rams. Mm-hmm. The Vikings beat the Packers. And the Steelers beat the Seahawks. That I feel a little less confident about, but it's possible.
Especially the Vikings. Especially with the Vikings beating the Packers and Steelers beating the Seahawks. That's going to take a real miracle.
Sure. But it could happen. We've seen stranger things happen as fans of the NFL and as fans of the Bears. That would lead you into Week 18, where, of course, the Bears would have to beat the Packers, and then they need a little bit of help. They need the Lions to beat the Vikings and the 49ers to beat the Rams. Both likely with their playoff positions clinched and potentially home field. Is that right? So that's where it all kind of shakes up. Like, do those Week 18 games really matter to the Lions and the Niners? I don't know. We'll have to take a closer, deeper dive of that. But out of all those things could happen.
Right.
But I'm not going to get my hopes up and believe that they can. But I'm just letting you know, I've got a sliver. I got a sliver of hope. This much hope.
And a sliver.
Somehow all these things happen. And the
Steelers have helped us out in the tankathon by losing to both the Cardinals and Patriots to help us in that regard. And Mitch Trubisky was a part of those losses to those teams. So shout out to Mitch. Shout out to the Steelers.
Mitchell.
Yeah, Mitchell. But now they've benched Mitchell Trubisky for Mason Rudolph.
Yeah.
So, against the Seahawks, that's going to be a tall order. Vikings against the Packers. I mean, but, the Packers are starting, their playoff hopes are starting to dwindle as well. So those are the two toughest games out of this whole dream scenario. But again, and that's one scenario. There are also other scenarios that could play out. This being one of the more, clear paths, so to speak, with 9 different games needed to go away or so. Let me see. 7 different games needed to go away or so. And the Bears running out. But so you're telling me there's a chance.
That's right. That's right.
So
why not?
Keep the hope alive. I can go either way with it because I'm fine. If Matt Eberflus is the coach next year, I'm fine with it. The defense has certainly turned a corner. The way they lost that game yesterday, I think he holds big accountability to. I've made it clear who I'd love to see him replaced by. I don't care that it's a long shot. I was once a long shot to make it in this industry. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And somehow I got here. So I bet on the long shots, ladies and gentlemen. So you can make an argument that losing some games could help them get to a situation where they can make the correct decisions on some of these stuff. But again, not things I necessarily root for, but certainly monitor. So, and you talk about the Bears Cardinals game, Bears winning, fun for fans, Cardinals winning, better for the tankathon, and I'm sorry, that's a big element on how this team will do next year. So there's variables all over the place, and I'm excited to see how it plays out. I'm not going to say I'm necessarily rooting one way or the other for anything. I want the number 1 pick. So I don't know, but it's fun to talk about all these different scenarios. It'd have been a lot more fun if the Bears had just done what they were fully capable of, and that was simply beating Cleveland. And then they would have had 2 home games coming up where I think Soldier Field would have literally been, a raucous crowd, and the Bears would have had an opportunity, and Justin Fields would have had an opportunity to play in front of a Soldier Field crowd that he's probably never experienced. I know he's never experienced before. And that's a fan base with hope in the stands. He's walked out that tunnel a million times and never gotten to hear a fan base with hope. I've heard that in the Soldier Field stands, and it's a different energy level. And I think it would have been something that the Cardinals and Falcons wouldn't have been ready for. And now instead they're going to come out the tunnel greeted with boos. And that's disappointing for everybody. And, at the end of the day, I think that's part of the evaluation process, that they weren't able to pass that test in Cleveland with a meaningful December game on the line, as slim as some people thought those opportunities were. So I think that wraps things up here for tonight. It's been a fun there. Yeah. So no, thank you for joining me here for a little therapy session. I appreciate everybody joining in the chat. Please hit that like button on your way out as you guys all hit the doors to go watch Monday Night Football. Again, go Eagles. We need that for strength of schedule. Keep that in mind.
I'm saying it. Fly, Eagles, fly.
Yeah, fly, Eagles, fly. And, one more reminder before everybody takes off here is I just want to remind everybody, now's as good a time as ever to become a diehard here at CHGO Sports. Obviously you guys know we do podcasts and live shows for every single team: Bulls, Blackhawks, Cubs, White Sox, Sky, literally every sports scene in Chicago, we have it covered here at CHGO. Premium written content for members at allchgo.com. 20% off events. We've got Blackhawks watch along coming up here just a couple of days, or tomorrow.
Got a watch party tomorrow night. Yep. Broken Barrel.
Watch party tomorrow night for the Blackhawks game at Broken Barrel. So make sure you head out there and hang out with the CHGO Blackhawks gang. Nobody covers the Blackhawks better in the city than those guys do. Merchandise for all teams. You get a free shirt right out the gate if you become a CHGO diehard right now, and then discounts on all shirts going forward with your diehard membership. And a members only Discord where you can have conversations with Bears fans and all Chicago sports fans with a more nuanced level of conversation than maybe you see on those mean streets of Bears Twitter. So a lot of different opportunities. Adam Hogue is putting out, his newsletter every week, with different things that is exclusive only to CHGO diehards. Mark Carmen put his grades out after the game yesterday. So these are some of the opportunities you guys have here at CHGO Sports when you become a diehard. So please head over to allchgo.com and become a diehard today. So I think that wraps things up. Jake, thanks again here for hopping on. And, I'm always this is what I call the Midwestern goodbye, because I'm never good at closing any show I do. That's because I never want it to end. So you can catch me on Spaces. I'm sure I'll be there here tonight as the Eagles game is going on, and we'll probably talk till 2 a.m. So
how
again,
about this for you?
Yes, sir.
Green Bay sucks. Bear down. I mean, you could go with that. That could be
Green Bay. That could be. I could start doing that as my closing. I like that. Green Bay sucks and bear down. So again, hit that like button, subscribe to CHGO Sports, and we will see you here tomorrow afternoon. Adam Hogue, Mark Harmon, and myself at 12 p.m. Central. Cole Kmet going to be joining us live on the show, so make sure you tune in. So again, Green Bay sucks and bear down.
We all silly like the mayor.